Hi everyone, Tim here from SHQ. I'm here to run you through what you need to know if you're considering purchasing a windsurf package. This video is for anyone considering getting a setup for themselves. You may be someone who used to do it a long time ago and want to get back into it. You may be a complete beginner just considering taking the sport up. Yeah, so let's get into it. Okay, normally when someone comes into a store wanting to get some windsurf stuff, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. What is your weight? Can you water start? That means when you're lying in the water holding the sail, can you start from that position where the sail pulls you up onto the board? Or do you need to do what's called an uphaul, where you're standing on the board and then you pull the sail up using a rope and then take off like that? And then the next thing that's a good bit of information for us is where do you sail? What water states are you sailing in? Are you sailing in the waves? Are you sailing flat water? Is there weed? Is there not weed? Do you want to go fast? In the old days, board size was sort of dictated by its length, but these days they all go by volume, so the volume of the board. The higher the volume of the board is, the more buoyant it's going to be in the water, which makes it more stable and easier to stand on. If you need your board big enough to be able to uphaul on, then you'll need a board anywhere from sort of 145 litres up to 200. That's because you need a nice big stable platform to stand on and balance as you pull up the sail. If you can water start and no longer need a board that you can uphaul on, that means you can drop down to something, less than 120 litres, because, you're using the wind in the sail to sort of lift you onto the board. And once you're standing up on the board, upright with the sail, you can use the sail to balance against. When you walk into the store for the first time, you notice that there's just an absolutely huge range of boards from a lot of different brands. So I think it could be quite helpful if I break down all the boards into different categories. Based on your ability, you'll know which category of board to sort of choose from, and then each of the brands will have an offering for that category. Okay, our first category is beginner boards. So typically beginner boards are at least 150 litres or more. They'll usually have a soft EVA deck, so it's nice and easy when you're climbing up on the board to do your uphauls. You're not scratching your shins up or anything. Another key feature is they'll usually have a centre dagger board, which is a large central fin that's retractable, so that if you hit a sandbar or something, it's going to fold up. What this centre fin does is it allows you to keep your ground upwind. So when you're learning to windsurf, the first thing you've really got to get your head around is keeping your ground upwind and not drifting downwind, because then you'll have to walk back up. So this large centre fin will give you more surface area to push against, so you'll be able to keep your ground upwind much easier when the wind's really light. All windsurf boards will have a rear fin as well, but yeah, this centre fin is optional. The next thing a beginner board will have is heaps and heaps of foot strap options, because another skill that you need to learn as you're sort of learning to windsurf is getting in and out of the foot straps correctly. What beginner boards have is foot strap positions that are really far forward on the board, so it's really easy to get in and out without sort of struggling to find your feet. And then as you progress, you move your foot straps more outboard and down and away from the board, so you've got a better sailing stance to go faster. So within the beginner board category, the key boards offerings from the brands would either be like the JP Funster series, the Fanatic Vipers, Starboard Goes, or the Goya Surfs. Basically different brands' version of the same thing. They do have sort of slight variances between the models and the sizes they offer, but they basically all do the same thing. The next step after your beginner board is what they call a Freeride board. Okay, so these boards, they don't have the soft EVA foam deck, they don't have the centre dagger board, and they have less foot strap positions. And by removing all of that stuff, it makes the board much lighter and more lively, which makes them much better once you get them onto the plane and you're riding around faster using your foot straps and your harness. Yeah, so you can see on this one here, this is the Goya Volar. So it doesn't have the centre retractable dagger board, and so it's just got the single rear fin. Freeride boards are typically quite wide shapes. What that width does is it helps you get planing much earlier, and it makes them nice and stable if you need to stand on them to uphaul. You can start on a Freeride board, when you're pretty comfortable uphauling something a bit bigger, and you want to learn how to sort of use the foot straps and the harness, and you're starting to sort of get some planing happening and learning how to carve, jibe and doing that sort of thing. In the Freeride boards, yeah, the Goya Volars, the JP Magic Rides, the Fanatic Geckos, Starboard Carves. The next category of windsurf board we're going to look at is Freerace. Okay, so these boards are sort of, once you've done a bit of time on your Freeride board and you're sort of feeling you want something that's going to feel a bit faster, get sort of closer to slalom speeds, you run them with cammed sails, race your mates and be nice and quick and sort of have fun windsurfing in that manner. Typically a Freerace board, you know, they're going to be a bit narrower than the Freeride boards. So a narrower board is generally a little bit better through the chop. You know, a large wide board can sort of bounce around a little bit when it gets a bit choppier. You know, you'll find they usually have sort of a more parallel rail shape. They'll have quite a flat, fast bottom. You know, some designs will have these little cutouts here to reduce the wetted area, so there's less friction when you're going flat out. And you'll find the stance on Freerace boards is a little bit more technical to sail. You know, you're going to be, your heels are going to be more hanging over the edges a bit more, you know, and you're going to be really driving hard off that fin and driving the board much faster. So you can see there's sort of less foil positions. And one of the nice features of most Freerace boards these days is quite a lot of the brands that they come with the foil approved box, so you can actually put foils in there if you want to have a go. But like, that's not, some Freeride boards actually have that too, but you know, most Freerace boards will have that. So most brands offer sort of one or two boards in this category. So for JP, you've got your Super Sports or Super Rides. In the Fanatic range, you've got your Falcons and your Blasts. And then in the Severnes, you've got your Foxes. And in Starboard, you've got your Futuras, which are quite a popular board. The next category to look at is like freestyle wave boards, or you might have heard of them called bump and jump boards. Basically, these guys are like a wave board, except they've got a really flat rocker line. So when I'm talking about rocker line, I'm talking about the bend in the board. So generally, like, more rocker line is going to give you a biter, drivier turn, and a flatter rocker line is going to make the board feel faster. So yeah, so the freestyle waves, you know, most of them these days, they come with a thruster setup. In a freestyle wave board, it gives you a really nice planted feel and gives you lots of high wind control, and also gives you more grip in your turns. So generally what a bump and jump board is for sort of like higher winds in sort of rough conditions, entry-level wave sailing, when you're down the coast and in the waves and you want to wave ride on them, and doing jumps. Basically, it's like, you know, you want a nice sort of fast board that feels nice and small, it's good through the chop, and you know, so you can sort of hit some ramps and do some jumps and start playing around with that, and maybe even going for some loops. Some of the boards that fall into this category would be the JP Freestyle Wave, what we're seeing here. The Fanatic Freewave is another really popular one. Severne Dynos are a great option. Even the Severne Pyro almost fits that category. There's the Goya Ones, the Quatro Powers, the Starboard Codes. Yeah, plenty of boards fall into that sort of flat rocker line wave board bump and jump category. The next category to look at is wave boards. Generally when you're wave sailing, there's two different conditions. There's usually like cross shore or cross off wind, you know, and that requires like a no compromise turning board, if that makes sense. So you just want something super drivey and down the line so you can do airs and nice big hacks and stuff like that. And then there's sort of another subcategory called like onshore wave boards, you know. Generally this is when the wind's blowing a bit more sort of cross on. These will be a bit flatter so they can sort of go a bit faster so you can do better jumps. And they've also got a little bit wider shapes so that when you're wave riding in onshore wind, you know, you need the board to hold more speed because you've got less power in the sail. So, sorry, I'm trying not to get too technical here, but so generally on a wave board, you know, they're going to have a bit more rocker in them. You know, they're really about having a board that's just going to be really drivey or loose, whatever you kind of want, but it's just really about having a really nice turn. You know, that's what wave boards are about. So generally in wave boards, they'll either come in thruster setups, that means 3 fins, or quad setups, which is 4 fins. Yeah, they'll have usually just 3 straps because you really need to get your back foot over the rail. You need to get your toes on the rail over the other side so you can sort of turn off the bottom. And yeah, they're quite narrow too compared to sort of some other boards. So onshore wave boards include like the Severne Pyros, the JP Magic Waves, the Goya Custom 3s like we've got here, the Quatro Cubes, Fanatic Grips, and then you're sort of down the line, sort of cross-off wave boards are more like the Custom 4s from Goya, the Quattro Pyramid, I'm using that board at the moment, love that board, the JP Ultimate Wave. And the final category to look at is foil boards. So these boards are specifically just for foiling. So like, I suppose you could run them with a fin in it, but it's really not going to feel that great. They're made to just be ridden with a foil. Typically they'll have like either wider tails, depending on the design. They'll have more inboard foot straps because when you're foiling, you're sort of standing more upright. Offerings from the brands is like the JP Hydra foils, the JP Free foils, Goya Air Bolts, Severne Aliens. Okay, so now if we consider those questions we asked before in terms of the category of board you're going to select. If you weigh sort of 80 kilos, you know, and you want a complete beginner board, you're probably better off to start with a beginner board 160 litres or more. If you're looking for a Freeride board and you weigh 80 kilos, you know, anywhere from, depending on how competently you can water start, anywhere from 100 to 160. You know, most people for their first Freeride board will be a 120 or a 130, something like that. Okay, so if you consider which board category you're choosing, you know, it's important to ask the question like where you're sailing and what's the water state. Generally, if you're sort of getting a beginner board, you know, it's always easier to learn on flat water with less chop, you know, just because it makes everything a bit more stable and easy to use. You know, if you're blasting around in sort of sub 20 knots, you know, the Freeride boards are really good because they get planing really early and get going quite easily. If it's sort of over 20 knots, especially on the bay here, it can get quite choppy. So then you're sort of moving into your sort of bump and jump boards would be the sort of the next thing up, provided you can water start, just because they really handle the chop very well and they're fun for doing jumps on and stuff. If you sort of want to go fast, then you're looking at Freerace stuff. Freerace boards are a bit narrower, so they're better through the chop. They can handle a bit stronger winds, bit choppier water. But saying that, like running sort of Freerace boards on dead flat water, like Sandy Point or Inverloch or something like that, they're great fun just to go blasting and go really fast. Then wave boards. Onshore wave boards are still quite fun on the bay as a bump and jump board if you're going to be going down the coast a bit too. If you always sort of just want to get out in the waves and stuff like that, then you're better off with like a dedicated wave board. Foiling's quite nice because it's really good through the chop, you know, it just takes out all the chop and you're not getting that slap on the board, so you just feels really smooth through really choppy water, so they're great in the chop. There's one more category just to briefly go through, and that's freestyle boards. Not to be confused with freestyle wave. A freestyle board is a board that's made for doing tricks, flips and spins and stuff like that. Yeah, but if you're after something like that, I think you'll know what you want already. Okay, so when you're choosing a windsurf setup, the next thing you're going to need to decide is sort of what sail size you're going to get. Generally, when someone's starting out as a beginner, we'd normally set them up with, you know, anything from like a 4.5 to a 5.5 square meter sail. That's because, you know, like the smaller the sail is, the lighter and easier it is to handle. As you progress, you're going to need more power to get planing. Once you start to move into sort of your freeride stuff, then you might want something a little bit bigger so you can get planing and get out in lighter winds. There's really no right or wrong sail size to choose. It's just the different sizes are going to work in different strengths of wind. Like typically, someone who gets into windsurfing and is doing it quite frequently, they'll have 2 or 3 sails for different wind strengths. So like a good setup, if you just wanted a couple, you're sailing here in Melbourne where we generally, our summer sea breezes are sort of like 15 to 20 knots, is you might have like a say a 4.7 and a 5.5 or a 5.0 and a 6 or something like that, depending on your weight. At SHQ, you know, we always have quite a large range of sails. We have access to most of the sail brands, so we can pretty much get anything you want if there's something we don't have here. But our key brands are Neil Pride, Goya, Severne, Duotone, Gastra, so plenty of stuff available. As far as sort of models in the sails, if we're looking at the Nil Pride range, Combats, Atlases, Fusions or Rides, they're the sort of 3 sort of user-friendly sort of sails, you know, like you can jump on the Nil Pride website and sort of have a read through, but they're just sort of different categories of sails like we sort of went through with the boards. With the Severne stuff, you know, the sails you'll be sort of looking at when you're starting out is either the Blades, the Gators or the NCXs. They're probably the 3 to choose from when you're getting started. In the Goyas, the 2 we mostly do here are the Goya Banzais and the Nexuses. Okay, once you've chosen your sail, we can then choose a mast. Generally the safest thing to do is to select the same mast as the sail brand you've chosen. So then you can ensure that the bend curve of the mast is going to match up nicely with the sail. There is another brand that we do quite a lot of called Unifiber, and they make different bend curves to match up with the different sail brands. The pricing on masts varies quite a lot. Most brands will have sort of 3 levels of mast, and they're based on carbon content. So like a lower carbon content mast will be like a 40 or a 60% carbon mast. You know, they sort of range from sort of like $400 to $600. Then you've got your mid-range masts. They're like, you know, 70 to 90% carbon. You know, they range from sort of $800 to $1,000. And then you've got your high-end stuff, which is, you know, like 100% carbon, really sort of high performance stuff, you know, they're sort of $1,000 plus. For your first setup, something in the sort of lower end is probably going to be quite good, but I always find that most people who buy a beginner package, you know, and they get back into windsurfing, they're always back in 6 months' time if they buy the cheaper mast, changing it over for the newer one. The mast in your kit is probably the thing you're going to have the longest. You know, it's going to outlast your sails and your boards and stuff. So it's usually better to spend the money up front and just get something a little bit nicer, so you sort of future-proof yourself a bit better. Cool. And also in masts, there's 2 diameters. There's like this is the RDM mast, reduced diameter mast. There's also a thicker diameter called standard diameter mast. For most packages and stuff these days, we'll all just be doing the RDM masts. The SDM masts are more specifically for larger sails and sort of racing specific stuff. So yeah, generally 95% of the time we do the RDM mast with the packages. Okay, so the next thing you'll need is something to connect your sail to your board with. There's 2 bits you need. There's the extension. So this bit slots up into the mast. It's got an adjustable collar to effectively shorten or lengthen your mast. And then there's the base, which you screw into your board, and then your sail connects to it and clips together like that, so everyone's all connected up. So there's a couple of different systems. This is the one I use and prefer. It's called the Nil Pride MXT. And then another really common one that crosses a lot of the brands is called a Euro pin. So that's just like a stainless pin that just slots up into the end like that. So just as long as your base and your extension match up and connect together, then you're good to go. There are different lengths of extension as well. You know, they range from sort of really short little ones at 15 centimeters up to 45 centimeters. So if you're trying to get away with not getting 2 masts and having a big difference in sail size, then you can get longer extensions to sort of deal with that too. Next thing you're going to need is a boom. So booms come in aluminium or a full carbon one. They range in price from about $350 up to nearly $1,500 for a high-end carbon boom. The thing that you need to know is, you know, all booms are extendable. So they've got these little clips that pop up so you can adjust the length depending on your sail size. You just need to make sure you get the right size for the sails you're using. So on your sail bag and on your sail, it'll have a little specification that says boom. You just want to make sure that that number falls in between the size of the boom. So booms go from, you know, like 140 to 190 to 160 to 210, all the way up to like 200 to 250 for like larger race stuff. Yeah, generally when you're starting out, aluminium's great. You know, it's fine, it's strong enough. But if you want a bit more stiffness and performance down the track, then the carbon's a good way to go. Last of all, there's a few accessories that you may or may not need. I think the one that you will need is definitely the uphaul rope. So this attaches to your boom and to the bottom of your sail so that when you're doing your uphauls, you lift it out of the water. You don't have to have one of these if you can water start. However, I still recommend you have one just to get you out of trouble if the wind dies or something like that. You can still do an uphaul if you really need to. The second thing is harness lines. So harness lines sit on your boom, so they're used in conjunction with your harness so that you can hook in, so you get a nice rest when you're sailing along. When you're starting out and you're just a beginner, you may not choose to get the harness lines and the harness straight away. You can sail without it, but I think quickly you'll find that you'll need a break in your arms, so using one of these is the next step. Next thing is the harness. So this just wraps around your waist. That's called waist harness, or there's another version called a seat harness, which has straps that go through your legs. You just wear them around your waist and you'll just hook into the harness lines as I've just described. Okay, so hopefully now you've got a bit more of an understanding of what you need to get windsurfing. We've always got heaps of packages and stuff available, so I'll put a link in the description. Those packages are just a starting point too, so if you want to swap stuff out or something, just give us a call and we can sort you out. Generally, like a windsurf setup in Australian dollars will cost anywhere from sort of like 3,000 to 5,000 or 6,000 if you sort of choose sort of higher end stuff. But yeah, you can definitely get a nice setup for around 4. If you have any more questions, be sure to just shoot us an email or give us a call. There's quite a few very enthusiastic water sports people for all the sports we do here. So yeah, just get in touch if you've got any questions, or if there's a particular product we don't have on the website, most likely we can get it. So yeah, be sure to check with us first.